Okay, so welcome to another Hearthside Chat. Looking forward to this year's Nature Culture Connection camp, which will be in August in Clophill in Bedfordshire. So this evening we've got Elly Stuart with us, who's going to be chatting about eldering, and we'll be chatting together about eldering. But before we get into that, I just want to give an opportunity for us to bring our hearts and minds together with a bit of gratitude. So Elly, would you like to start us off with some gratitude?
Yes, sure. Yeah, gratitude for friendship, actually. I walked with a friend who's not well, hasn't been well for over a year this morning, and just had a lot of deep, very deep sharing. And yes, so real gratitude for that heart connection that one has with close friends. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. To that. Mm. Yeah, I'm very grateful today for after a day that was spent mostly on the computer, I managed to get out for about an hour at the end of the day, and I walked down to the Bluebell Woods and I just really caught them at that perfect moment. They're just in all their blue carpeted glory right now. And I sat there, let myself sit there for about half an hour listening to the stream and listening to the birds and smelling the bluebells. So that was
Mm.
my gratitude today for the bluebells, for the beauty of the woods, and also for the gift of just that hour of time in nature. It's a lovely way to end the day.
Mm.
So, oh, excuse me, tickle in my throat. So, yeah, on the Hearthside chat, we're going to just be talking for about half an hour. Well, it is half an hour. We're going until 8:30. Elly and I will just be having a conversation about the topic of eldering this time around. And then there'll be a chance also to ask questions. So anyone's got any questions, pop those into the chat and we'll do our best to get to those. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really. So I want to introduce Elly Stuart, who I met at an Art of Mentoring camp, I think, in the first place. And also we were living in the northeast of Scotland, quite close by each other for quite a few years, about 7 or 8 years, I think. Um, and yeah, so we've become friends over the years. And I suppose for me, Elly, I always associate you with the Art of Mentoring, with the Eight Shields movement, I suppose because that's where we first met. And then, of course, we had those elders' breakfasts, didn't we? That we used to meet once a month that went on for many years. So our connection really deepened then. You know, you talk about friendship. I felt like our friendship really bonded then through the deep sharing and the work that we did, the Eight Shields work we did together in that elders circle. So yeah, so it's really lovely. It feels really nice to be able to be here and chat with you today. I was really happy when you know, Peter and I just sort of randomly allocated who'd be doing the different dates, and then it turned out that I'd be chatting with you, and I was very, very happy about that. So here we are. um, so yeah, so you're going to be at the camp as a camp, one of the camp elders. So do you want to say a little bit about, maybe a bit about, you know, how you first got involved with Art of Mentoring, Eight Shields, Nature Culture Connection? What's your journey with that?
Sure. I think I got involved with it because a friend of mine, Linda, had been to the camp and I'd got back from being away to the north of Scotland. And she actually looked different. She was 65 and she'd obviously been through a massive transformation. And I said, "What have you been doing?" And she said, "I was on this camp, Art of Mentoring, and I was invited to an elders' breakfast." And she talked about it. And Miriam Draw was the elder there. And Miriam has a grandmother who's an Indigenous elder. And Miriam's also a psychotherapist. And she held the elders' breakfast on that camp. And I think it gave Linda a completely different map, I think, for the rest of her life. Um, and I was intrigued. I just thought, you know, for someone of that age to have such a big shift,
Mm.
that they look different. And so I got involved with Maeve Gavin, who had set up the camp up north, and she invited me on to do a workshop with her. And then, yeah, I went on the next Art of Mentoring and was invited to the Elders Breakfast. Um, and actually, it was very interesting. I'd never camped in my life before. and I was about, what, 58? So that in itself was a big edge for me. You know, the uncomfortableness of camping and all of that. But then somebody coming and saying, would you like to come to an elder's breakfast? And pointed out the bell tent down the road. So I went, and Linda was holding it, which was rather lovely, actually. And she talked to the whole notion of the elder, and then invited us to say why we were there. And that's where it started. And then on each of the camps over the next 4 months, yeah, we had elders breakfasts every morning. So a group of us became very close and were treated as elders within the camp, which was extraordinary. I mean, our culture is so different in the West, and to actually be respected for the experience that you've lived and for your being is very moving, actually. And yeah, and you know, it's part of the intergenerational thing that happens on the art of mentoring, where, you know, everybody has a place and is honored. So yeah.
Yeah. And there's something you said there about, you know, eldering as well. You know, I think in our culture, I've used the word elder, and I notice people here older or old. You know, so is there something about that, like for you, you know, what's to be able to step forward and say, yes, I'm an elder versus I'm an old person? What would you say is the difference in your experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do see it as a role. I don't feel that, you know, I'm nothing like an Indigenous elder because I haven't had that experience. But I think what it's done for me is it feels like it's very much about being rather than doing. Because again, in our culture, there's such an emphasis put on doing things. You know, what are you doing at the moment, or what's your job? And I think eldering is much more about being, and it's also about deep listening. I think it's also about quiet mind. So really being present and in a space where you can be with someone and be present to what's going on with them and listen to them. And yeah, drawing out what needs to be out. And also, I think for me, storytelling is very much part of eldering as well. So, you know, maybe if somebody tells you about something that's happened to them, I often respond to that with something that happened to me. So, yeah.
Sharing stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so within the context of the camp, you know, there are the elders' breakfasts that are hosted every morning, I think, aren't they? Yeah. And so do you want to say a little bit about the elders' breakfasts and how that sort of structure works, and how it, and maybe something about how you feel that serves the camp as a whole?
Sure. So, yeah, we invite people, and, you know, again, this is just, it's kind of purely academic. We decided way back in that very first camp that we need to have a cutoff point. So we said people 55 and over, you know, and that doesn't mean anything really, but it's just a way of having a boundary around it so that we don't get completely crowded out. And so for the first two elders' breakfasts, that's who we invite in. Anybody of that age and over who feels drawn to come and sit in an elders' breakfast. And we have some quiet time for reflection. And then one of us, it's usually led by two of us, will talk to the idea of the elder. And then we open the space for questions and for sharing. And after the first two breakfasts, we open it to anybody from the camp. And I don't think I've been to a camp yet where it doesn't end up with there's not enough space in the tent for all the people wanting to come in, which is, I always find that really moving, because what's always voiced is a lot of people who have no elders in their lives. And, you know, not people, just not older people who they feel they can speak to and trust.
Mm.
And, you know, that's heartbreaking for me. But a lot of people are in that situation. So I think, yeah, to have people who are older and who have, you know, lived experience of all sorts of things, and can listen without judgment, and not necessarily solve your problems or anything, not to do that. But it's more, you know, the art of questioning and drawing out and being there and listening deeply, which can be very healing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure there's something about, you know, people know that the elders have had some kind of life experience and may be able to bring some, you know, knowledge or insight or perspective to whatever it is that they're they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
I think
remember
also,
I remember at one of the camps when we used to have, when it was the art of mentoring camp, and we used to have the teens camp, you know, and they go off on the first day and they go somewhere else and they make their camp, and they never came back to the main camp for 4 or 5 days, did they? And then they got welcomed back with this beautiful ceremony. I do kind of miss that, but I remember that there was one point where a couple of the elders were invited to go to the teen camp and got taken there, you know, went and just, you know, sat with the teens and caught their stories. But the story that the what came back was that when the elders arrived, the teens' behavior shifted quite significantly. You know, they stopped playing up, they stopped answering back, they stopped being, you know, awkward, you know, all those aspects of their behavior just settled when the elders were present. It just really struck me. It's like, wow, that's the gift, isn't it? When we bring the young ones together with the elders like that, there's
yeah.
some kind of magic reciprocal something that happens.
Yeah, and I think if elders are kind of treated with that kind of respect, like, you know, you're always given a comfortable chair, maybe with a sheepskin on it.
Mhm.
Um, um, yeah, just to make sure that you're comfortable. It's simple things like that, and that you're there. You know, you're not separated off. You're not in an old people's home. It's, you know, just thinking of our culture, what happens to some older people. And I think, and that you're a crucial part of the community. And I think it does make a difference. Yeah, and you know, there are a lot of people who do have grandparents, who are their elders, but there are a lot who don't. And yeah, it's it feels very, it feels an enormous privilege actually to
Mm,
be
mm,
given this role.
mm. So you're going to be back at the camp this year?
Definitely. Yeah.
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 And is there anything, so, you know, during the camp, we have the elders breakfast and then people will go off into their guilds and do other things. And I think the foxes are probably doing things in the woods as well. And then there's a few people gathered around the hearth. And, you know, can you speak a bit about that? Because I don't see that piece because I'm leading a guild. So I have no idea what's going on in the rest of the camp because I'm occupied with that. So what's sort of happening at the Hearth and in the rest of the camp?
Yes, well, I visited the foxes last year at one stage and told them a story. Um, Actually, a story about foxes,
Very good.
which was great fun. And they all sat and listened, wide-eyed. It's lovely. And then we had a question and answer session afterwards, which was nice. Yeah, and they made fire. They wanted to show me. I didn't know this was going to happen. They wanted to show me how they could make a fire. So that was really exciting, and to see their enthusiasm and the energy they put into that
Mm.
was great. Before I told the story, so perfect in front of fire. But yes, I was at the Elder at the Hearth last year, so always sitting round the fire, unless we were in the Elder's tent doing something. So yeah, if anybody feels they're overwhelmed, because a lot of people when they come to the camp, because they stop work or they stop doing what they're usually doing, quite a lot of grief comes up, which is absolutely as it should be. And so, yeah, we're there to hold that. And I mean, that for me is a big piece about eldering,
Yeah.
holding people's grief and honoring it and, yeah, allowing it.
Mm.
But also, if people are just needing some space away from their guild or away from whatever, because again, if you haven't done something like this before, it can be quite an edge.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Hearth is somewhere that's safe.
Mm.
You can just come and sit, don't have to do anything,
Yeah.
and we're just there as a shoulder to cry on, or just a listening ear, or
Yeah.
to have a bit of crack, you know.
Got a bit of crack, a bit of a crack. And do you find that, do the young ones come and find you as well as the sort of adults, or?
Yeah, certainly teenagers if they're there,
Hmm.
and 20s upwards. Yeah, some of the children do. I mean, a few. I've had a few games with kids,
Hmm.
um, just because they've noticed that I'm quite playful sometimes. Um, and yeah, there was a very small person last year who was incredibly grounded and very independent. And yeah, I mean, we had a connection
Mm.
at one point, which was really sweet.
Mm.
Um, I was intrigued actually because I've never seen such a young person. I think she was about 2, um, who was completely at home in the camp.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
mm, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So happy to be there for whatever age. And
yeah,
it's like they say it takes a village to raise a child. It's that thing of, yeah, children can be there, and the parents don't necessarily always need to be. Other people will be looking out for them as well.
yeah, yeah. And that is one of the gifts of the camp, isn't it? Is that the parents can be in their activity and know that their children are being looked after.
Yeah, yeah,
Someone's keeping an eye on them, and they're not just, wandering around
yeah,
lost, as it
yeah,
were.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
I know I remember Sobonfu Some talking about, the Daggara people and how they would, it's really up for the grandparents are the ones that raise the children, because the parents are the ones who are going out doing the work and, building and cooking and hunting and digging and doing all the physical things, because they're the strong ones that can do that as adults. And then the elders are the ones, who are past doing all that physical stuff. So they're the ones whose job it is to raise the children. And in their culture, the parents' job is to just love the children, not to
mm,
discipline them, not to guide them, but really just to love them.
Yeah.
It's a lot more of a, grandparent, grandchild
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that distance actually can make it easier in some ways.
Mm.
I think mothers and daughters and fathers and sons sometimes, yeah, can be a real edge.
Yeah.
And I think the grandparent just has that extra generation
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
and a slightly different relationship to the child too. Yeah.
So, I don't think we've got any questions coming up at the moment. So, I just wanted to ask you, what for you would you say, what's one of your highlights of, all the camps you've been at? I know you've been at quite a few over the years. What would you say are your sort of favorite moments of the camp?
I think I'm just thinking of one of the early ones. Um, when the teens came back, it's at the end of towards the end of the camp, maybe the second last day or something. And we were all gathered in the big tent for a feast. And they came back very quietly. In fact, yeah, a lot of people didn't notice them. And they crawled under the chairs and under the tent and then just suddenly appeared, covered in mud and leaves, wild things suddenly appeared. And it gave quite a lot of people a bit of a shock. But it was wonderful.
Mm.
The concealment, the way they did it. And yeah, like creatures, like wild things. But then how I think it was John Young or whoever it was, welcomed them into the camp and then invited them to tell their story and
Mm.
how, yeah, one young man stepped up and told the story of how it had been for him. And I found that so moving,
Mm.
to hear somebody about age 14 just describe um, what he'd been doing and his solo time in the wild and what the story of the day, what he'd seen, what animals he'd tracked. Um, and yeah, just to see the transformation, actually. So
Yeah.
moving, so moving. And I think particularly because, in the West, the teenage thing is it's usually drugs or alcohol, and then to see kids who are actually doing a real time in the wild, sort of,
Mm.
it's not a vision quest, but getting towards that sort and what a difference it makes for them
Mm.
to have that connection with nature,
Yeah.
to have that connection with each other as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. We see that. I remember that it might have been the same camp. Yeah, I remember seeing some of those teenagers turning up on the first day and they had their, devices with them and the parents were like, right, you're going to put those away now and you're going to go off on this. And they were like, what? I can't take my phone with me and I've got to turn my phone off. And it was just, you could see they were really not happy about it. And then to see them 4 or 5 days later, as you say, coming back, covered in mud with twigs in their hair and just like full of the adventure that they've been on was just such a beautiful thing to see. And you can see just in that short amount of time the difference it's made to them.
Yeah. And I think also, yeah, just seeing people right at the end of the camp, at the end of the week,
Mm.
and how it's touched a lot of people,
Mhm.
and how it's opened them up.
Yeah.
It's, yeah,
Mm.
because
Mm.
it's not every day that you get the chance to kind of live, not quite indigenous, but in that kind of way, which starts with the lighting of the fire and ends with the unlighting of the fire. Mm.
Yeah. Well, it's in a connected way, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
connection
beautifully.
with the land, with nature, with the elements, with
Yes,
one another.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
mm,
And
yeah.
for yourself, what's a personal highlight for you? Would you say what do you look forward to most when you're going to the camp?
Oh, um, I think certainly I love the intergenerationality of the whole thing. Um, and seeing new people and reconnecting with old friends. Um, and yeah, seeing families actually with their children taking
Mm,
the leap. Yeah. It's and also just being there for people. It's yeah, it's an amazing thing to do.
mm, lovely, thank you. So I see Isabel's just turned her video on. Did you have a question that you'd like to ask, Isabel? Hang on a minute, I'll just unmute you. There we are.
Yeah, not really any questions because I was there last year, so everything that you said, is it Ellie?
Yeah.
Ellie, I remembered and but I really enjoyed your conversation about the little ones and the families. I think a camp like that is brilliant for us as adults, but I think for children and the next generation to come, it's paramount. You know, that's the way I see it, the craving for that kind of experience of reconnecting experience, whether they're craving for connection full stop, that they are in a crisis as a generation. So I don't have any grandchildren yet. um, but yeah, I guess if I come again, and I probably will come again, it will be for myself. But if I do have grandchildren at one point, it definitely would be for them as well. You know, that there aren't many places or experiences where they can have that level of connection to each other and connection to nature, like you said, you know. So yeah, it was lovely listening to you talking about that.
And safety as well, I think, where people don't have to go and stop them doing something because they're going to walk in front of the car or whatever. It's yeah, just that thing of the village being around.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're almost out of time, Ellie. So thank you so much for giving us your time and chatting with us about eldering and setting more of a picture for what that's going to be like at the camp for anyone who doesn't know that already. It's been lovely to chat with you. And I hope this has, whetted people's appetite a bit more for those who are curious and maybe on the fence and wondering about it. So yeah, thank you so much. And this video recording, hopefully you'll be finding this on Facebook or on our website or somewhere like that. And then next time we're going to be speaking with David Smart Knight, who's going to be talking about village building. So that's next Monday at 8 o'clock. Okay. And thank you very much. You want a bit of gratitude, bit of closing gratitude, just to wrap things up?
Yes. Yeah, gratitude for some of the rain that we've had recently, because it's been very, very dry here. So, and it's just the earth was so pleased to have watering. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for the crows that I can hear just cawing outside right now. They're all getting quite busy. I guess they're going home to roost, but just really grateful for being in a place where I can just hear the birds. It sounds like they're, literally overhead the whole time. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. And